But I just have to flip it up and
You just hit the button. Hit the doomsday button.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I have to put a key in and turn it. You have to put a key in and turn it.
Oh man, we need to make one of those.
Yeah, like
Hit the doomsday button.
to go live.
Yeah.
Like I have to put a key in and turn it. You have to put a key in and turn it.
Oh man. All right, so what's up, guys? We're getting things going. Watching the stream over here. Jack and I are talking about how we want a doomsday button to start the live stream.
Yeah, because when we go live, crazy things happen. So
You know that on Meat Eater podcasts now, they are building a dial that every single person that's sitting there has, and there's a light bulb in the middle of the table.
okay.
And if they're not interested in the conversation, they're able to dial in their level of interest in the conversation. And the more interested people are, the brighter the bulb is. And so if they're not interested... So can you imagine having this conversation with like 6 people, and everyone is there constantly rating how interesting they actually are?
I feel like I'd have like a seizure or something.
That would be really nerve-wracking. Well, no, it's just like one light.
Oh.
So like the one light in the middle is collectively wired
To everybody.
to everybody. And so what everybody's interests are controlling.
That'd be kind of cool. I'd be scared because
It's nerve-wracking.
I feel like Ben Hackler would get on here and somehow like
Yeah.
upset the system.
Are you a little bothered because of the new camera lens that we look a little bit...
This looks blurry on camera. I'm just gonna say.
We're being insulted by our worship leader now.
No, it just looks blurry from where I
Well,
am.
you can fix that.
How?
It's that new lens. Just...
How do I?
Okay.
We got a new camera today, or a new lens, so we are
It's on autofocus.
Hi.
This is... Okay, look on there. Just look on the...
Now it's just getting
Okay,
worse.
just look at Jack. How are we there? We good?
I think we're good.
I promise you that we're actually somewhat professional. Just waiting for folks going, hey, what's up? If you're here watching on here, just give us a comment. Let us know you're watching. So we can get things going. So, thanks so much for coming to the Homesheet Rundown. We do this. I said Homesheet, didn't I? Just go with it, Chad. Just go with it.
It's like names in the Bible. Just keep going.
That's why I tell people all the time they get really nervous when they're reading the Bible out loud and it's the Old Testament and they're like, Chad, what about these really weird names? And I just tell them, just go through and don't stop. That's what everybody else does secretly.
Yeah.
That's kind of it. Jessica, what's up? Great to have you on here. Thanks for popping on. Well, so we got a Homesheet rundown. I'm going to let Jack kind of get things started off while I do some sharing things and Facebook live streaming things.
So the first question that we have for this week is...
We're going straight into questions?
I might as well.
Oh, talk about what did you like about this idea of the whole making decisions series, these 2 weeks?
I mean, I feel like that's probably one of the largest paralyzing agents in people's faith is the idea of, am I making the right decision? Am I going to, is this decision going to mess up the rest of my life? And then we also don't think about all of the small little decisions either, though. So,
yeah.
I mean, just like the idea of like a decision matrix or, like godly oriented decisions, I think is very, very important.
I think that I never thought so much about decisions having an effect on things until probably 3 or 4 years ago when I got old enough to realize, like, oh, okay, so this is what happens, and you begin to look back across time and like see either categorically, okay, this person's great at making decisions, or this person's kind of crummy at making decisions, and realizing, oh, okay, I have a choice in this. Mm-hmm. Like I have some. Me and you talk a lot about what are the things you can control.
Yeah.
And I think that like the decision making things, like it's one of the things we can control. It's just what kind of decisions are we making. So yeah, it's just wild. It was a fun conversation to have. So I'm about to pop on y'all in the comment thread if you're interested in this. I'm going to leave the link to the Homesheet. You can also find it at myfoundry.life, and you just kind of swipe over a little bit, and it says Homesheets, and it's right there. And we do these every single week. We put together just a take home for you to bring into the house to come. We talked about personal worship a lot this week, which is a thing that we've been talking about a lot for the last 6 to 7, 8 months. But we've not had I've not really gone into it that much on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, like I love the idea of talking about personal worship, because like for I think a lot of people, myself included, like I'm not musically inclined whatsoever, and so like Sunday morning worship is like the big deal.
Yeah, well, you hear personal worship, and you're like, oh, does this mean I need to learn an instrument and sit in my bedroom by myself and like sing songs quietly?
Kumbaya.
Yeah, so a little kumbaya, and it's no, and I think that's part of that is this idea that we've condensed worship. I feel like we should get Matt on it at this point in time, but she's not. Nothing, don't worry. But we think that it's just this music thing.
Yeah.
But it's not, and the whole idea of worship really is, and if you kind of break it down into it, it's about what are you showing worth to.
Mm-hmm.
And so we might use the language of like personal devotion. People my age kind of came out of youth ministry in the 90s. There's a whole language of like a quiet time, that sort of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I started thinking about that heavy earlier this year, because even inside of that framework, and the reason I like the language of personal worship more than anything else is it's not about a knowledge thing. Like, we don't jump into this to try to find a way to gain more knowledge, but this is really about an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that, a lot of times folks struggle reading scripture and doing things like this because they instantly get confused and they get bogged down. And so it's kind of what the Homesheet does too.
Yeah.
Is like, hey, let's categorically put these are like very deliberate practices that we can do to follow Jesus
Mm-hmm.
that run alongside of a thread and a theme. And so like that's why we do what we do. So, but yeah, that's kind of, we chased a lot of rabbits.
Eventually, in your words, we make a stew.
But yeah, you do sooner you make a stew. So, well, let's kind of jump in. So you can go find this at, I posted the link inside the comments, or you can go to myfoundry.life and find that home sheet for the week. The link into the link in the comment thread takes you directly to a PDF of this Sunday specifically. The myfoundry.life, that changes every Saturday night generally when we re-upload for the next week. But I talked about Romans chapter 12, and what does it mean for us to make right decisions. The podcast is already up, so if you want to come back to this later, and after you've listened to that, you can, or just kind of cruise through. You're more than welcome to do that. But Jack, let's just start kind of popping in.
Right on. So yeah, the first question is, when was the time you made the right decision even when it was hard?
I think that's a solid thing for people to think about.
Yeah.
You have
an answer for it?
I remember when I decided to change colleges and transfer. I was 19.
Yeah.
And that was a big decision.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you moved home.
Yeah, I actually have written down here is moving back from Florida.
Yeah.
Was like it was a life-altering decision.
Yeah. I think me making the decision to go to school in Texas and start off there was not that big of a decision at all. It was just kind of like, well, my mom and dad went there.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds fun. I'll just do that.
Yeah.
That wasn't really a decision. But I think the decision to move home and transfer schools, that sort of stuff, that was a big one.
It's kind of weird we have like a similar story.
I know, I didn't think about that, but like it's exactly the same.
I was 20, you were 19.
Yeah, I was 19.
So, when have you felt like a decision was either a choice to conform to the world or conform closer to the image of Jesus? I read this one and I really wanted to ask you about it because of just like all your stories about having like long hair and just like your love for the music scene. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, that was actually, I was in ministry when I was doing all that. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't really there. I would say that for me, and this is not, it had a good ending. It didn't have a good beginning. Is I remember being, it's my freshman year of college, was a wild year. We're not going to go into that. But just a lot of changes, a lot of just kind of personal discovery, that sort of thing. I really met Jesus for the first time that year. And I went away to work at a summer camp. And like the first couple of weeks of the summer camp, I realized like, okay, this could get really incredibly awkward and that sort of a thing. And while my freshman year of college had ended up well, it started off really, really rough.
Okay.
And I remember making a decision that summer. I was like, okay, Jesus, I'm just going to put you on the back burner. I'll pick you back up when I get back to school. But I'm just not going to be relationally and socially miserable for the next 2 months. And I'm not going to move home. So just kind of like, I'm going to put you on the back burner.
Yeah.
And I think you've heard me talk about this before.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I found every single thing I'd ever wanted in life that summer, but was miserable the entire time. And I think that's kind of, coming out of it that summer, I came into life with a very, very different resolve to how I did things. And like, that's the one, and like 5 months later, made the decision to move back home.
Yeah.
And not continue going to school in Texas and to transfer to Louisiana Tech and all those sorts of things. Was just kind of an after effect of that. Of like, okay, I'm learning my lesson about what this looks like. So, I mean, that's my thought with it.
Yeah, like for me, it's kind of eerily similar in a sense that like when I lived in Florida, like I lived a life that I thought represented human flourishing. Mm-hmm. Like I had a bunch of friends from all over the world. I lived with 20 Russians, so I've got several fun stories.
That had to be so different.
Let's just say some of them are hard to remember. Anyway, so like I mean, I lived this lifestyle that was just like I flew planes and lived in Florida and went to the beach and hung out with people, and it was a great time. But it wasn't until like I came back and like I moved back home and like made that decision. And I remember I had this day between it's like I was stuck between two friend groups. I had one group over here, I had one group over here, and like one of them was like the Wesley crew.
Yeah.
And like Alan Johnson, all of that, and they had asked me to be on leadership. And like I had to like make a decision to like step out of one and into the other.
Yeah.
And like I remember driving down the road and just seeing like this path in front of me.
Yeah.
So that was a very hard decision to make, but
yeah. I think anybody, when we look back at our life, we're able to see decisions we've made, and there's always there's the phrase hindsight's always 20/20. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's so much power, like when you're looking at like and from the perspective of this like personal worship piece, especially that when you're looking back at the past, that you're able to see these avenues where God has moved and God has done things, and it's just really difficult to see that on the front end. So many times I think it's important for us to reflect back on the past and think of these things, because what it does is it kind of gives us markers for us to realize. Because when we're in the moments of those things, we never know how critical something might be. Yeah.
Just like how even like the small decisions in those moments have like...
Well, you know, Aaron Mansfield, who did you meet Aaron at New Room a couple of years ago? Like quickly in the hall?
I don't think I've ever like shook his hand, but we've communicated a little bit on Zoom and Instagram.
Okay. So Aaron, so Aaron's this pastor I worked for. He's one of my mentors. He's one of the folks that's responsible for me. But Aaron had this old like country preacher phrase he would say is that everyone has enough hell inside of them to light their world on fire. Mm-hmm. And I would hear him say that, but I think it's important for us to realize that, you know, we all have the propensity to destroy our lives in this matter of seconds, and that when it's important for us to realize that, you know, everybody is capable of good things and bad things, and that, you know, sometimes people sit back and say, well, how did this happen to me, or that kind of a thing. And there's just the whole personal responsibility angle to it, but also just for us to be aware that our decisions, especially the older we get, the more responsible we are. You know, when we have kids, when we have families, when folks are depending on us, it helps us just to realize, like, okay, my decisions, this is at a critical place. And I think all it takes many times for people just to realize that and recognize that, and they're able to begin kind of working in that model from that point.
You want to go for the next question?
So Haley is watching. Haley's my friend. I knew Haley's. Yeah, we can go with that. I'm just talking people in the comments. So
Wow. Yeah, so what does your own practice of personal worship look like?
You know, I think that's a very important question for everybody to ask.
Yeah.
I really think that the question, in light of the whole 9 yards, is especially, are you building up knowledge or are you building up experience?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I if you'd have asked me a couple years ago, like, how are you experiencing God right now?
Yeah.
I would have reacted to that question probably pretty either negatively or just like completely brushed it off.
Mm-hmm.
Versus now, it's like, oh, well, I can say this is what God's doing in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think seeing and naming that kind of stuff is super important, because we see where he's at.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'll tell you a practice that in the last couple of years, and I've always kind of done it off and on, but it's become significantly more important to me in the last couple of years, is I always journal now.
Yeah.
And I think that it's inside of journaling many times that I'm able to move past knowledge and move into experience. Like that's been a big thing. I'm kicking around the idea because I mean just the way this has been talked about and stuff, that I feel like I need to spend some more time just talking about personal worship and just really kind of outlining that. But
yeah, I would say that's, as I said earlier, that's probably something I've always struggled with a little bit.
yeah,
It's like I love prayer, and I think prayer starts with worship,
mm-hmm.
but just kind of getting into a rhythm of it that's not like just like singing hymns or you know,
yeah,
praise and worship in the morning.
And I think that's for somebody especially who like me that spent years and years and years in worship ministry, that music was not part of my own personal worship time until very recently.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you know, I've heard of people that they can just kind of sit down and they do that, and that never jived with me. And very rarely am I actually playing anything.
Yeah.
Like I've but it's just realizing that, okay, my mind races. This helps my mind to stop race. It helps me focus on something, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've been getting into the Electro 365 that you've been sharing a lot.
So good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I'm just going to say, like, I had to make a pitch about this today.
We did it last week too.
I know, it's
I
fantastic.
I think that on the YouTube, so I uploaded this
Yeah.
to YouTube like we talked about, and the YouTube screen grab is me literally with my phone in front of the screen there being like, XTO 365.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you like that so much?
So
Sarah McBroom's watching.
Sarah!
That's just funny.
Yeah.
We miss Sarah. So.
We miss Sarah. So it's, first off, like, I'm just a huge fanboy of Pete Gregg.
Yeah.
You know, like, I've got to meet him a few times. I just like how he rolls.
Mm-hmm.
But like the way that they pray through scripture is fantastic.
It teaches you something, man.
Like,
doesn't it?
So I love Seedbed. Like, look up Seedbed, the daily text. Like, I listen to that every day, and it's like fantastic in helping you like grow in understanding.
Yeah.
And I would say that if you had like Seedbed and the Lecto, like you have understanding and you have experience.
Yeah.
And like the Lecto just teaches you how to experience what they're doing. It's phenomenal.
It's what I love about it is it just the way that they come into like going back to certain pieces of scripture and just like that we're gonna pray through. It's I don't know, like, and I have to struggle. Like, I'm using it now, and I have been for the last few weeks, and I struggle with not wanting to, like, you know, like we talked about earlier, like how I learn things. Like I dissect and I watch and I kind of Like I'm having to remind myself, no, Chad, don't. No, don't. Just do it. Just be. Don't try to, that sort of a thing. And so I think that's huge. If you've not found that yet, it's spelled LECTIO 365. And so you're finding it on the Android store. So it's Apple and Android. It's like 9 minutes in the morning.
And it will read to you. Yeah. And they're British, so it makes it a lot more fancy.
It does. It makes it instantly seem like more holy because they're really cool accents.
Oh yeah. So anybody I tell, I'm like, yeah, and they like read to you and they're like, oh, okay, and I'm like, they're British, and they're like, Oh, I'm definitely looking at it now.
I make my cup of coffee. I go sit in my chair in my office. It's like 5:30 in the morning. I hit play and I drink my first cup of coffee and just let it roll. Mm-hmm. And I put my phone out of reach, but not out of like hearing. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna fiddle around with it or anything. So I think that's yeah.
Yeah, and I like that it walks you through, like last week was hospitality.
Yeah.
And it's got a morning and a night. And it's like all of the prayers and like the guided meditations or whatever you want to call it, like are about like asking God to help you be and grow and change in certain areas of your life. And, you know, like...
You can argue with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's cool. I think it's a super, super cool tool. We've kind of diverted into like this big, huge personal worship conversation, and I ain't mad about that.
No, I'm not either. I mean, that's kind of what this is for, though.
Exactly.
You know, like we don't want it to be like super, like, hey, you have to ask these questions specifically and have yes or no answers. Like, I mean, have fun with it.
It's just it's a way to kind of jump into stuff. So, you know, let's go to the practices.
All right, so it says take some time this week to make a list about the biggest decisions you are facing right now and pray about them.
I just think putting stuff down on paper and put it in front of you. Mm-hmm. It's a qualitative. I mean, it's there. And I've said before, I get a sheet of paper, stick it in your Bible, draw a line down the middle. Left side's for requests, and that right side's for you to write the date down when it was answered.
Yeah.
And just start. There's also, if we look inside the Gospels especially, is prayer is a repeated, and you look at the language of the Psalms, like it is about rhythm. It is about we are going before God constantly. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's something about us learning to pray for. Now, a lot of times, like people have these massive, huge, big things going on in life, and they're going to pray about that a few times. Mm-hmm. But what is it about, like a very distinct prayer list?
Yeah.
That it's just, I'm going to this in the morning, or I'm going to this in the evening, or whatever my time of the day is, and I'm going to just drill down into this.
Yeah. Like, I feel like for me to really grow in that area, it would be, like, I can do the morning. Like, I can wake up and I can, you know, go through my daily Bible and I can hit the lecto up. But it's like, I always fail in that evening time.
Yeah.
That evening time slot is just, I can't, for some reason, sacrifice 30 minutes max right before I go to bed, which should honestly be healthy.
Yeah. Well, so what I started doing was, and I realized that, you know, all the people that say, and I'm horrible, but I still watch my iPad in bed as I go to sleep at night. I watch YouTube videos about rock crawlers and just cooking, all sorts of stupid stuff. But my phone's not in the bedroom anymore. My phone stays charged in a charger somewhere else. And I've had that practice for months, and I love it. But I think to take that last 30, 45 minutes before bed, and that's what I do. And you sleep so much better. It calms you down. It slows you down. It's all of that. Just that kind of get away from screen thing it's just there. It's the way to do it. But I think the more if you look at the home sheets over the course of time, you notice that there's a lot of stuff in here that's always like, write this down. And I think there's just something about writing things down.
I mean, it's the awareness angle.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if God is everywhere, you're never far from God. It's about your awareness of Him.
Yeah.
You know, like if you pray small prayers and do small things like that, you know, A, you're aware of what He's doing. B, you're building your confidence up for the big stuff.
Yeah, and you're building in a written record of God's faithfulness in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah.
So it says, take the time during your personal worship time to simply listen.
YouTube, William Augusto, hit play, put everything out of reach.
Yeah.
And just sit there.
It's probably one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but once you get into the rhythm of it, it's
I had to set a timer when I first started doing it.
What'd you start out on?
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
10 minutes.
I remember it was a couple weeks ago, the youth and I were talking about prayer, And so I wanted to have a little practical application, and so I made them all go sit in a corner for 10 minutes.
You put them in timeout for prayer?
Oh, I mean,
You put them in timeout for prayer.
they enjoyed it. They said they had a good time. But, I mean, like, it's an important thing, though, is to be able to, like, sit, and especially if we have just, like, screen time and how much that is affecting my generation and down, just...
Yeah. I find something, and for me it has to be instrumental, or it has to be, like, nothing in English. But I've got to have some sort of, like, an audio bed on so my mind doesn't wander.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just... like, get away, do it, and just listen, and, like, learn to breathe.
Yeah.
Like, learn to breathe right. Learn, like, when you do that, too. Like, if you're going to sit down for, like listening time, at the very beginning, it's going to be a struggle bus. Like, and I think listening time, and for me in my life, it's so much more beneficial and so much harder, because to get to the place to where I can listen, I've got to be there for a while.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the kind of thing. Like, this is why, carving out some time is a pretty serious thing. But then again, you read all these sorts of stuff. Like, I love to just all these biographies and that kind of stuff. Or you read about, like, all these, like, the desert fathers and mothers and that kind of stuff. And they prime their pump into listening all the time. But it took, the spiritual life is a full contact sport.
Mm-hmm.
So...
There's a quote I read in the book Garden City, and it talks about the soul is like a wild animal. It's resilient, but you're never going to find it if you're crashing through the woods.
Yep.
And you have to sit there for a second.
Yeah. 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 I mean, the critters are there, but you got to be quiet.
You got to be quiet.
Does that mean our soul's a critter?
Our soul's a critter.
I just like that word critter.
Oh, my soul's not a raccoon.
I just like that word critter. So...
Well, last question. Have you ever felt called to something? I feel like that's a little bit obvious.
Yeah, but I think that a lot of times people think the only people who are ever called to things are people like me.
Yeah.
Being called to something is out of reach. I don't think we need to normalize call.
Mm-hmm. So, like, what would you say to somebody who they're trying to find their calling in life, but they don't, and like spiritually speaking, but they're not wanting to, like, be a preacher in a church?
Well, I think that I think that call is an absolute normal thing, and you've heard me talk about before. I believe that Jesus gives us people, Jesus gives us places, Jesus gives us situations. I would just say, God, is there a place in my life where I seem to have an abnormal amount of just blessing?
Mm-hmm.
Or, wow, I can't believe I get to do X, or that's not a person I would normally talk to, that sort of a thing. I think that when anything in our life seems to be a little abnormal, I think it's the time for us to be like, okay, is God calling me to this person, this place, this whatever, that sort of a thing. It's kind of like in the Matrix they talked about when he said, whoa, I just had deja vu. They all got freaked out.
Yeah.
Because for them, deja vu mean a glitch in the Matrix and something crazy is about to happen. For us, it's like, how? I think for us, it's like, oh, wow, this is an abnormal amount of blessing, or like this is just not normal for me. I think the instant thing, okay, what is God asking me to do in this situation? How's God giving me something? How's all that? What is unique that I need to explore as far as being faithful to God?
Yeah.
In this thing, I think that's the first step. I remember I was talking about this one time several years ago, and somebody sent me a message after church, and they were like, I weld for a living. How can I give God glory while I'm welding? And it's like, just what does it mean for you to be where you are right now? Is where God needs you to be. And I think that allows us, so many times. Remember a few weeks back we preached and we talked about the good old days, the good old, that whole 9 yards. I think that so many times we get into this situation where we're longing for the future and we're waiting for the future, and only when this happens or this sort of thing, I will then get to do. No, what if the providence of God is the absolute present? And I think that's biblical. I think you look at Jesus' teaching, especially that whole To much is given, much is expected. Like, if you're not doing squat with what he's giving you now, why on earth do you think he's going to give you something better in the future?
Yeah. Because
you've not proven to be faithful in the present. And it's a little harsh, but that's what the big guy said.
Yeah. It wasn't me.
So, I mean, yeah. So that's just that piece is there. So.
Right on.
Well, thanks for tuning in to the Homesheet Rundown. We do this on every Monday or Tuesday. It's a fun little run. So if you've watched all the way through, congratulations. You've been here with us for 30 minutes. You're a brave soul. So if you're catching this on the YouTube, on the follow-up after, you can pop stuff in the comments. If you're watching this the replay on Facebook, you can pop stuff in the comments. We encourage you to go find the Homesheet, go find the links and stuff to engage, just to take this further, and we will see you back next week.
Y'all have a good one.